Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our full council today, Tuesday, the 30th of July. I would like to start with agenda item 1, declarations of interest. Do we have any, please? Councillor Roger.
I declare an interest in item number 16 as a Director and Executive Vice Chair of the Islands Partnership.
Thank you. Councillor Sims.
I haven't got an interest to declare as such, but I'm just Andy Guy asked me to mention that he'll be in later on when he finishes work. I'm going to have to go and I'll be in later on when I finish work, and I think Steve will be in later on as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, agenda item 8, it's I own property.
Thank you. Councillor Peake.
Number 16, I'm the Director of the Islands Partnership.
Thank you. So item 2 on the agenda is consideration of draft minutes from the previous meeting held on the 18th of June 2024. Do I have any comments about those minutes, please? Councillor Fraser.
Yeah, the minutes have got me down as being an apologist. I was actually here.
Okay, many apologies to you, Councillor Fraser. I will see that that's amended. Thank you.
Yeah, 2 in a row, a record.
Thank you. Okay, item 3 on our agenda is Chairman's announcements. I have an announcement to make, and that is that on the 16th of July 2024, the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government wrote to local authorities inviting them to work with the government to deliver a new programme of devolution in England. In setting out the government's proposed approach, the Secretary of State recognised that many local authorities are under financial strain in meeting their current obligations, and gave an assurance that the government will provide resources to deliver any new powers and functions devolved. In order to participate in the first set of devolution settlements, local authorities are required to formally submit any proposals they have by the end of September. The letter from the Secretary of State was followed by an announcement in the King's Speech on the 17th of July that the government will introduce an English devolution bill to give new powers to local authorities to support local growth plans that bring economic benefit to communities. On the 25th of July, the Council received a further letter from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, providing further information on how local authority officers can engage with officials to develop an understanding of what devolution could look like for their respective areas or regions. Given the intention to introduce the English devolution bill in the first session of Parliament, the letter highlighted the importance of early engagement with officials and for any proposals to be submitted to the government by the end of September at the latest, but earlier if possible. Recent discussions today with MHCLG officials have identified that how the Council of the Isles of Scilly is treated in regard of the devolution agenda is still being assessed due to the Council's status as a sui generis local authority. In order to inform members of the implications of these proposals and the potential opportunities for the Isles of Scilly, I've asked the Chief Executive to commence discussions with officials at the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government as soon as possible. I would also like to ask members to give some thought during August to what they would like any devolution proposal for the islands to look like. But remembering this is a two-way process, and it is not all about asks, but also how this delivers the government's strategies. A workshop is being arranged in early September for members to consider the further details received from the Ministry, combining this with their visions and understanding the potential implications for the Isles of Scilly. Given the need for the Council to respond by the end of September, I've asked for a report to be brought to full Council on the 17th of September to agree the Council's formal response to the Government. Thank you. Item 4 on our agenda is questions under Standing Order 14. I have none. Item 5 is to receive draft minutes from committees for information only. We have 3 reports. Does anybody wish to comment on any of those? No, thank you. Item 6 on our agenda is to consider motions in accordance with Standing Order 12. We have none. And item 7 is urgent items. I have none. So we move into part 1 and item 8. Applications for Arden House, Rams Valley. I think Sam is online, is introducing this for us. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. The proposal seeks work to Arden House, which is a semi-detached residential dwelling east of Hewtown on the island of St Mary's. Permission is sought to replace the existing conservatory roof with a fiberglass roof, which would include a roof line. Permission for this proposal is required as there's an Article 4 in place which removes permitted development rights for alterations to the roof of a dwelling house. And this application will be brought to committee as it's been submitted by a member. The proposal would maintain the existing roof form, massing, height, and presents no concerns for design or amenity loss. It's therefore recommended that the application be approved, subject to conditions set out in Appendix A of the committee report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sims.
I'm happy to propose propose the recommendations.
Thank you.
Not like if we told down, we turned it down, but as long as we pass it, I'm happy to propose it.
Thank you. Councillor Dean.
Happy to second it, and I'll go and tell Dan the bad news.
Hold on one moment. I have to vote. Thank you. So we have a proposer and seconder. All those in favour of the proposal? Thank you. That's carried. Item 9 on our agenda is the second of our planning applications for Racket Town Bungalow, and that's also in your hands, I believe. Sam, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The second application is for works to Racket Town Bungalow, east of Grimsby on the Isle of Tresco, and it seeks to remove the existing extension to be replaced with a larger side extension, which would have a hipped tile roof and roof-mounted solar panels. The proposal also seeks to reconfigure the rear elevation to reintroduce an overhanging gable end with the covered heating area underneath. Members may recall that Racket Town Bungalow previously received permission in 2020 for an alternative scheme, including a swimming pool and outbuilding. This permission was not enacted and has now expired, so this is a brand new permission. The principle of the current of this proposal is considered acceptable, and the proposal is considered for good design, which would improve the character and appearance of the bungalow. The scheme also presents no amenity concerns. During the consideration process, the applicant has submitted an ecological impact assessment and a preliminary route assessment, which has identified suitability for bats. Following this, the applicant has undertaken 2 further bat emergence surveys, identifying a common pipistrella bat roost and a brown long-eared bat roost. Details of how these species will be protected have been requested from the applicant, and they've submitted some details which we're clarifying with them. Once we are happy that these details would protect bats and have been reviewed by our ecologist, so we're looking to get those details reviewed by the ecologist. The recommendation is therefore that a decision is delegated to the Chief Planning Officer for approval, subject to the bat mitigation being agreed and supported by the ecologist. Permission would not be granted until the authority is satisfied that the bats identified will be protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, it's good to see this
plan is less extravagant than the previous one, the swimming pool. I remember there was questions at the time about water usage, and we were reassured it was fine, but it's good that they've lost the pool, and it's good to see us carrying out our statutory duty in regards to protecting bats, basically. So I would propose the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Legg, please.
Just wanted to second it and also again note the protection of bats as important. But yeah, second the proposal.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have a proposer and seconder. All those in favour, please. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sam. We move on now to item 10 on our agenda, which is the Local Planning Authority's annual monitoring report in the hands of our Chief Planning Officer, Lisa. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. So this is a report summarising the authority's annual monitoring report, or AMR. The AMR seeks to highlight the impact of policy implementation, in this case over the period 2022 to 2024, specific to planning applications and policy. The report shows an intent to progress supplementary planning documents. It includes an assessment on the delivery of housing and issues around housing, and captures both brownfield land and self-build registers. The AMR is one of the key documents for assessing the performance and progress of the Isles of Scilly local plan. As members may recall, unlike most of the local authority areas, the Isles of Scilly local plan does not set a target for the delivery of new homes. It recognises a likely newly arising need for local homes and seeks to enable delivery. It does not, however, prescribe this as a target. You'll note there is a continued trend of supporting and approving local need housing, where no adverse harm is identified. The local planning authority have not exceeded the 105 new homes identified as likely to arise over the period, which, if we want to permit more, is one of the triggers for local plan review. For this reason, it is important to monitor housing delivery. A key message is that no housing schemes have been refused. Smaller self-build sites come forward most often and have to date been the key delivery of housing on the islands, with a total of 9 further Section 106 homes permitted over the last 2 years. In total, there have been 32 new Section 106 approved, but because of the physical completion generally lags behind somewhere behind the approvals granted. Several developments have not yet commenced or are still under construction, and some counted in last year's AMR have actually expired. All new homes stuck to the required nationally described space standards. The space standards and the use of occupancy restrictions in the form of legal agreements are the key policy constraints aimed at controlling the long-term affordability and availability of housing on the islands. Over the 2-year monitoring period, we approved 7 new units of staff accommodation. One of the trends appears to be an increase in smaller seasonal staff units in the form of huts and pods or shared units. There continue to be applications for seasonal holiday let, and the last 2 years there have been approvals resulting in 6 new units of seasonal accommodation. These were all pods or huts. In terms of infrastructure improvements, the period saw the final approvals for the coastal defence works and the approval of the transformation of the town hall into a museum and cultural centre. The period saw no decisions being made contrary to the advice of statutory consultees. For this year, the Planning Department have partnered with another local authority, specifically to assist with assessment of planning applications, and this is as a result of the Planning Skills Delivery Fund, which runs to the end of 2024. Decisions continue to be made within the thresholds set by government in terms of the percentages of decisions made within statutory timescales or within agreed extensions of time. There were 3 appeals over the last 2-year monitoring period, with 2 decisions being upheld, 1 being overturned. So the quality of decision making remains within the thresholds measures set by government. The AMR covers both the local development scheme, which is the public timetable that details when and what development plan and other documents will be reviewed and subject to public consultation, and the statement of community involvement, which details how the community can expect to be consulted on planning matters. Both key documents were updated earlier this year. By way of background to the AMR, officers have also produced 3 companion reports which go into more detail on population changes, the housing market and housing stock changes, and general development management performance. So members are asked to note the content of the report and the appended AMR documents and approve its publication on the Council's website. And the second recommendation is to reconvene the local plan steering group and appoint to that group with a view to steering the direction of policy review and local plan review process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, it's a really interesting document. There's some really interesting stats in the paper and the supporting documents. House prices going up by 31% in the period, and population stats as well. Just slight weirdities seem like going on there. In terms of house building targets, the new government, have we had any indication yet from the government about how house building targets would affect us at all?
Housing targets, did you say?
Yeah.
No, I don't have any information as yet. It's due to any day now, so consultation on that, but I don't know. I know they're looking at reintroducing housing targets.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that'll be an interesting fact for us to work through if that comes up. And yeah, I would propose the recommendations and the membership of the steering group as set out in paragraph 41. Unless anyone else wants to make any changes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Grosset, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a thought about recommendation 2, because obviously this is a key piece of work, the review of the local plan. I just wonder whether colleagues might consider that if a member is unable to attend a meeting, if they brief another colleague to deputise for them, whether this would be a good idea. So I was going to propose a recommendation to that effect, to recommendation 2, if colleagues would support that.
Does anyone want to come back on that?
I would support that. I'd ask, membership of the group to make sure that they have a substitute if possible.
Okay, that's good. Thank you very much. Are you seconding the proposal?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Peacock.
Just a query, really. Only that lead member for environment is a Snails resident, and you're asking for one member representing each island. So just for clarification, is that one member from each island, including if that member happens to be a lead member, or one member for each island if it doesn't? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I would leave it up to members if they want to just have each lead member and one for each island, or so you're saying the lead member is an off-island councillor, yeah. Then I would probably suggest an extra one representing the island.
If that's the case, I'll happily assist.
Councillor Marcus. Okay. Right, so we've got the 2 recommendations to note the monitoring report and approve its publication on the Council's website. We have proposal for the local plan steering group. So all those in favour, please. Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you, Lisa. So we move on now to item 11 on our agenda, which is the Children and Families Update Report from our Director of Children's Services, Anne. Thank you, Anne.
I think I'm going to kick off with this one,
Okay.
Chair, if I may.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Firstly, I'd like to run members through the findings of the second monitoring visit. Overall, the conclusions were very disappointing and, frankly, unacceptable. They found children not getting the right help at the right time. They found a deterioration in standard of social work practice. The pace of change was too slow, and partnership working was not collaborative enough. There was lack of clarity on roles and responsibilities. Although there were some positives overall, a year on from our first ILACS inspection from Ofsted, and after a lot of energy, effort and expense, there was very little meaningful impact or change in what Ofsted were finding. The monitoring visit took place in mid-May, so 2 months or so ago, and in that time the Council have moved at pace to rebuild leadership of the service. Together we've appointed a new director, a new service manager and 2 social workers. We have a new leadership team in place and a renewed commitment to driving change. I want to recognise the commitment of all staff, both within our service and without. And I know the report before us today hurts them. It's not something they take any pleasure or satisfaction in. And our new DCS has hit the ground running. Her report is before us and details her actions and priorities. The report addresses some of the findings from our last monitoring visit as well as other themes which have been emerging. In addition to the safeguarding work we need to do at pace, I want to draw attention to the section in the report about special educational needs and disabilities. Members have requested a conversation with Anne about this, and that's now been scheduled for next month. The priorities highlighted in the final page of her report talk about where we'll be focusing our efforts. Bullet point 2 talks about accountability, and I believe we as members have a key role to play in making sure that takes place. We expect Ofsted to probably be back on the islands before the end of this year, and from what I've seen, I'm optimistic we'll be in a greatly improved place. I'm sure we've turned the corner and will be offering improved outcomes to our local children and families. In terms of how I know that's going to happen, we're now having our monthly quartet meetings, which is bringing the Chief Exec, our lead member, our chair and our Director of Children's Services together to have some of those honest and frank discussions about what we're doing internally as well as externally. We're having the regular improvement board meetings and also looking to improve the regularity of those. We're reassessing how the steering group, the engine room of the service improvement process is working with the improvement board. And we're also having more member workshops. We've had one and have one scheduled for August. More multi-agency team meetings are taking place. Early help was a theme of a recent one. And importantly, we're also looking to hear the voice of the child more and more frequently. The Vice Chair and myself recently met with young people to talk directly about their experiences living on Scilly. So although the themes from the monitoring visit need to be taken into consideration, I'm confident we're moving in the right direction to make sure that we don't have a monitoring visit of that type again.
Thank you very much. Anne, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. I'm really happy to take any questions in relation to the report and take it that everybody's had a chance to read it.
Thank you, Anne. I'm going to ask a really contentious question. I have been doing a little bit of research, and bearing in mind what Joel said, that the improvements really weren't any good, were they, over 12 months? Unacceptable, you said, disappointing, deterioration, lack of partnership working, all that. What would be the problem if we went to a different organisation to give us the support that we needed to get our service back on track? I'm just wondering, is it the biggest no-no ever on the planet, or is it just something that you just don't even think about?
A helpful question. All the way through the improvements since the inspection outcome, we've had Essex as our improvement partners. They've invested a lot in training and spending some individual time, including structures, with the previous practitioners that were in post. So it's not that it's off the table at all, it's very much real. We're going to refocus our support from Essex as our subject matter experts to help us with the implementation of Mosaic. You'll find that in my report.
Thank you. And it was just a bit about the financial implications. I am a little bit confused by that. It said there remains a current budget pressure with children's services due to agency staff. How many of our staff are agency staff from children's services, please?
So we currently have myself and we have 2 of the practitioners, the social workers and our service manager.
Are they mainland based or are they on the island?
Our 2 social workers are living on the island. I spend the majority of my time here, and our service manager is here every week, at least for 3 or 4 nights a week.
And it's a final question that might sound a bit odd. I've gone on to the next report, which is about our performance review, about financial. And it does talk about that we're hoping to get the Department of Education is going to give us an uplift to help us with all the improvement plans that we need to make. What if that money doesn't come forward? How much it's going to cost our services to really do this improvement plan?
I'm just going to hand it to Russell.
I'll turn me off.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the finance report sets out that there is a forecast overspend at the moment based on the existing staffing arrangements we have. I think it's about £430,000. That will be the position if we get no assistance. I have asked and put the request in to government through various departments of whether there is any financial support that they would be willing to offer to help reduce that overspend that we're currently forecasting.
Email, I think, earlier this week, when you said the government's got a new black hole of 22 billion or something. I just find it a little bit worrying.
There is, I mean, obviously we've heard from the government this week that they have a significant black hole. We've put the request in that they do hold existing funds, as I understand it, in the Department for Education to help councils that are going through the improvement journey. We have asked the question. There is no guarantee that we'll get any money. I know that at the moment, but there is money allocated that the Department for Education can already draw on. If we are asking for any additional uplift in any funding through the spending review, I think you're very right in your assumptions that with the government's current financial position, that would be extremely unlikely. I'm not massively hopeful that we'll get additional money, but we can but ask. If we don't ask, we won't. Yeah, we won't get anything.
The potential is 400,000. That's what you're saying.
That's what we're in the finance report, and that's
there are financial implications, aren't there? It says in the report, it's not even mentioned that, isn't it? Where it says financial implications, and that just worried me a bit because it wasn't even mentioned. Thank you.
Yeah, the other point that you raised, I just put a further point around what the director was saying about Essex are obviously our improvement partner. The current position that we are sat with the Department for Education is that following the Ofsted original inspection last year, they have accepted that we have put an improvement plan in place. And at the moment, they are monitoring that on the basis that they feel that we are in a position to turn it around ourselves with help from partners. If they don't think we're going to do that in time, they may well then step in and look to make a directive of removing the service from the council and giving it to a different local authority to run. So at the moment, our improvement, and we've made this clear before, the improvement plan is based on us being able to turn it around ourselves, although with a lot of help from various partners. The final say could be that the Department for Education will say that enough is enough.
But that would still cost us, wouldn't it, if Essex or
wouldn't they, it wouldn't, whoever took over the service in terms of delivering it, that it wouldn't lose us the cost of doing so, no.
But Essex is not helping us for free, is it? Is that the cost? It's included in that 400,000.
Most of Essex costs are covered through the government.
Oh, that's
correct.
Good.
Yes.
That's something a little bit positive then.
Yeah, they're improvement. They're a recognised improvement partner for the government. They're funded through an improvement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grottek, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to Councillor Williams for helping us through this report, and thank you to the Director. I'd also like to thank Councillor Bedford as well, because I'm very glad she's worried, and I'd like to assure anyone, quite frankly, that is watching this debate that each and every single member of this authority is deeply worried at the report and is totally supportive of moving us into a better place. So thank you very much for that contribution, Councillor Bedford, which I'm sure will be reflected around this table as we move forward within this discussion. We are indeed in a very challenging time, and I know we would all like to focus on the outcomes that we want. I'm confident that the new staffing changes will help us focus on those outcomes and indeed bring us to a better place. I would like to ask the Director in a minute for assurance that she is comfortable with the pace of the progress since we received the letter and since she began to lead us, because I think that would be good to actually record that. I'm pleased to be a member of the Improvement Board, which is working to address the concerns of the Ofsted inspection. And indeed, there are many concerns and we have a lot of work to do. I'm glad to have welcomed our Director, and I would like to thank her also for working with members to refine our vision for the island's children and plan for the future. As the lead member for children has said, a key piece of this work is to improve the voice of the child. We actually received a commendation for work in previous years, so I think we just need to dust ourselves down and actually try and get ourselves back to a point where we listen more carefully to the concerns of the children who are the future of these islands. Quite recently, as the lead member for children has said, we had a very positive and encouraging hour with young people. And working together, I hope we can monitor the situation and bring forward the very real improvements that we need to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peacock, please.
Hi. So on page 7 of the report, we talk about SEND, and you said that there was an assurance test. Can I just make sure that you have the resources that you feel you require that you're bringing to Improvement Board? Because obviously we know that everything's a little bit stretched, and I just want to make sure around this table that we're confident that you have the resources you require for that little piece of work.
Thank you. Good question. We're currently doing lots of work to really understand what our actual strength is, and the SEND issue is a partnership issue. It's not just for the council. We had an independent person sponsored by the DFE to undertake a test of assurance, and we're currently working through that. But there's no doubt for me that actually the piece of work that we're doing around the strength of our workforce and the right calibre of practitioner within the workforce is a key component part of that. And I have no doubt that I will come back to this council to present what we need in terms of a workforce to take that forward, particularly in relation to SEND.
Thank you. Councillor Roger, please.
I'd like to thank Councillor Williams and the new Director of Services for the report and all the information in there. I sat here thinking it would be remiss of me not to say something, although I should declare an interest again in this, because I'm very immersed in this situation as a parent at this precise moment in time, and I don't want to go into that. It's very disappointing to know that we were in this position a year ago and we spent £400,000 or whatever of agency fee money, and here we are having the same conversation again, and children have suffered because of that. I would like to hear what the assurances are that that's not going to be the same conversation in 12 months' time. It's not just the financial impact on the council's budget, which, as we know, through agency staff has been quite considerable. It's that assurance that we're not going to waste the next 12 months, which we seem to have done for the previous 12 months. My other consideration in this is, throughout the report, there's no mention of a relationship or working, particularly in the SEND environment, with the Five Islands Academy. Our children grow up in that academy, and there doesn't seem to be a relationship between this and that academy in anything that we say or do. I know it's a separate organisation, but I don't understand why that's not happening, because a lot of the failure in that part of our children's journey can be laid at someone else's door. And I would like to see that relationship built up so that that doesn't happen in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Roger. Would you like to come back?
Sure. I think I'm just going to try and unpack where the questions are in what's just been talked about. So a question around how can we make sure that we don't end up where we were. What I would say to you is I think we're in a very different position to we were when the monitoring visit report was published, when the monitoring visit took place. We now have highly qualified and experienced senior social workers holding two really key posts. They are practitioners who are experienced in small island working, and they have been part of other organisations that has driven significant improvement for children. The fact of the matter is that sometimes you need the right people in the right place with the right skill and experience who know what delivering good children's services look like. I feel confident that we've got the right people in place, but of course delivering good children's services is a partnership issue, and I think you rightly point out the importance of the relationship with the Five Islands Academy. So I'd want to assure Council that from day dot, really, my work has been focused on building relationships with the Academy. We're now much closer in looking at children who are on reintegration timetables and a lot more sharing of information and working together. In fact, we've had more joined up working with the Academy in the last 8 weeks than I can see since before. So it's a top priority for me. It's where children spend the majority of their time. And with those children in reintegrated timetables need to spend more of their time. So I just give you my assurance that that's a top priority.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, just to talk about the Academy, it's worth reminding people that the Academy has achieved their last Ofsted inspection 5 months ago, was good with 2 areas of outstanding. So I know that is just a moment in time, but it's a great achievement. And I know everyone there, as an employee of the Academy, worked really hard towards that and should be congratulated for that. So in terms of this report, we discussed it in depth in the scrutiny meeting, I think. And at that meeting, I looked at your report and asked you questions about that. I'm going to ask questions about the actual Ofsted letter this time, if that's all right. Like Councillor Williams said, it's really disappointing to see where we are. And it says here there's an inconsistent and often weak practice and limited progress about implementing the change and its effect on young people. How is what you're doing now, how has that had a significant effect on young people?
So I would agree with the Ofsted findings. And one of the things that we're doing is to walk back through quality assurance activities. So re-looking at children's lived experience through the eyes of their children's case files. We're doing that as an exercise as a team in order that we can look back and look at areas that we need to improve on to make sure that doesn't happen again. But I just would reiterate that we have the right practitioners in place who understand what good looks like. We've got some work to do to really think about what's our model of intervention with families across the islands, and actually what's the support structure and the accountable structure of the Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly Safeguarding Partnership. We have some training coming in early autumn that will help all partners understand the new working together to safeguard children guidance, and that will really help partners and our own service to get on the same page, to know what good looks like and understand responsibility and accountability.
Okay, so when it talks about consistent, not appropriately or consistently applied interventions, children being subject to strategy meetings when their risk does not warrant it, learning from audits, that sort of thing you're talking about, because these people have been good and delivered good services, they know what they need to do to get us to that place.
Absolutely, and good professional casework supervision is a key way of doing that. The right management oversight on the practitioner's work, absolutely key, and undertaking a programme of auditing ourselves so that we learn. Partnerships that learn together get stronger together. And And a key part of our improvement is to put the right quality assurance framework in. So it's not an activity that happens, but it becomes business as usual. And you're only ever as good as what you do about what you learn. So putting that learning into practice is absolutely key. Child's voice is absolutely key. Testing ourselves by going back to talk with children and families about their experience of us, taking that feedback seriously and doing something about it. That's the methodology that we're following now.
And just two more things. So I think it's worth reiterating the start of the last paragraph in the Ofsted report. The staff work hard and care about the children and families they support. So I'd like to thank them for that. I'd also ask the same question I asked in the scrutiny meeting. So as members, it's really uncomfortable to be in this position and to know that we're not supporting the children of the island as best we can. How can we as members make sure that this doesn't happen again?
I think what's really important role of the Statutory Director of Children's Services is to make sure that as members you're equipped with the right information, that you know the things that are working well and the things that we need to strengthen, really. There's no doubt that this kind of improvement journey is really tough, but part of the improvement programme that's in place has the right governance structures for reporting two things, as you rightly point out, about scrutiny. And, you know, as an experienced Director of Children's Services, I expect you, as members, to be really forensic in your questioning of me and of the service in order that you have the right kind of assurance. But we also need your support and your ambassadorship around how we can reimagine what children's services can look like across the island. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mumford, please.
Yes, we had a good meeting, I thought, at scrutiny. We went in depth. I was just wondering, since then, are you satisfied with the progress that you are making?
Absolutely. I've listened to some really great practice, particularly this week with a couple of families. You'll see in my report that we've moved as a service to be much more integrated within, really. And the opportunity to watch our non-social work qualified staff listen, learn and develop has been a real pleasure. We've had some really lovely moments this week of feedback from our alternatively qualified social workers. We tend to think about the qualified practitioners as social workers, but we have some great staff across children's services. So the co-location and the opportunity for coaching, mentoring in a live way is really paying dividends. And maybe the next report that I bring back will bring back some quotes from the staff themselves about what they feel they're learning over time.
And when do we expect the next Ofsted report?
So I have met with our Ofsted colleagues. I have to say that their approach has been very supportive and full of humility. They have a real belief that that we can turn this around. We've had some conversations about when this should next come back. We had some thoughts about whether that's next year. But actually, the scrutinising part of a good Ofsted inspection is really helpful in terms of pace. So we've had a conversation about the possibility of them coming back in October, but there's no firm date.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to say from the chair, I very much concur with Councillor everything that's been said, but I'd just like to pick up on what Councillor Roger mentioned, and it's absolutely clear to me that we cannot be in this same position in 12 months' time. But I do have great confidence that we will not be in that position, that we will be in a much improved position. I've been really impressed with our new Director for Children's Services. Anne has only joined us recently, and the work she has done in that time has been phenomenal. And I have to say that I always do, but I'm really confident in our lead member for children as well. Councillor Williams has not taken his eye off the ball for a minute. He's taking this extremely seriously. as I know most of you members are, if not all of you, that can be inputting to this are doing as well. From my point of view, as Councillor Williams mentioned, I sit on the monthly quartet meeting, basically to try and oversee to a degree and see how this improvement plan is working. And I have great confidence that it is working. There's a long way to go. There's a hell of a lot of challenges. Our Director of Children's Services had an absolute baptism of fire with all this. But there is improvement. I can see that. And I just hope that we're able to keep our eye on the ball and keep this going so that when Ofsted do come back, they are really impressed with what we're doing. And I have confidence that they will. But it needs all of our support and all of our commitment to make sure that happens. So I'm sure we're going to give you all the support that you need. And thank you. Now, just need to find my page. Please excuse me.
23.
Yeah. I had it all marked and then I lost it. But there are two recommendations. Obviously, we've been considering the contents of the report and its appendices, but we need to endorse the priorities in the Director of Children's Services report. So could I have a proposer, or have you already proposed it, Councillor Williams? Yeah, and Councillor Mumford seconding. All those in favour, please. Thank you, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you for the report. So we move on now to our financial business. Item 12 on the agenda is our first quarter financial performance report in the hands of our Chief Executive and 151 Officer, Russell. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is the first quarter of the 24-25 financial year and sets out the financial performance over a range of our activities. If I start with the revenue budget monitoring position first, I need to report to members that as at the end of the first quarter, the forecast at the moment for year end is an overspend of just under £460,000. And included in that is an allowance for the pay award, although that hasn't yet been agreed or paid. One of the reasons I have put that in there is just to flag that there is obviously another potential pressure there with the announcement this week, where although local government are not part of that announcement in agreeing that the public sector will have 5%, because we are in part of a different negotiation, you have to think that the level that was agreed with the government is going to have some bearing on the level that is going to be fed into the local government settlement. So we could see further budget pressures coming through in terms of the pay award. As I said, we did start the year with an allowance of 2.75, and I won't rehearse the debate that happened on Monday that the settlement is going to be much higher for key services, and the allowance that the previous government had put in, which was based on where we got our figure from, is significantly under allocation. If you move on and forward, then obviously, as I said, it's disappointing that we're overspending by 460,000. We had a significant overspend last year. I was hoping that I'm planning that we would bring this back under control through a series of actions and activities that we'd put in place. The first one was in and around children's services, and you'll see that we've already mentioned it, but the majority of this overspend is down to the activity in children's services. When we put the budget together and the financial plans together some 6 months ago or so now, we had a plan that we would reduce our spending in children's services in terms of staffing costs by moving away from expensive agency staff and moving on into the realms of employing staff on direct council terms and conditions. That was the plan at that point. We went through that process in trying to achieve that through April and May, but sadly we could not find any recruitment success in those areas. In addition, during that period, we had that second Ofsted monitoring visit, which confirmed that the existing pace was not going as expected. So that left us with the issue of not being able to recruit a new team at that point and bringing them on to council services, and in fact increased the pressure more so in that we had to move fairly quickly and get the right people in as quickly as possible to start showing Ofsted and the Department for Education that we are capable of managing and moving this forward at the pace they're expecting. I think we've managed to do that, and we've already discussed that in the previous paper, and I would just echo that I think we now have the right team in place. Unfortunately, that team at the moment comes at a significant cost, which is far greater than if we had recruited on council terms and conditions. That budget pressure is ongoing. We will be looking across children's services in other spending areas to see whether there are other savings that we can make. I think we've identified a couple of small ones already, which will help mitigate this as we go, but I'm sure that there will be further pressures as we move forward through that improvement journey to get to the level of service that we are expecting and the children of these islands deserves. So the other issues in terms of the budget, in the revenue budget, is that adult services is still overspending with agency staff, but a significant reduction in comparison to where we were last year. And I'm working with the staff there to further reduce that going forward for the remainder part of the year. So at the moment we're making good progress in terms of weaning ourselves off of agency staff in the adult space, and hopefully we'll see that overspend reduce as we go through the remaining part of the year. We have some mitigations against that overspend, which was the corporate contingency, which we knew that we would probably need to help smooth our journey over the first quarter, and we've managed to have additional interest receipts in the first quarter due to higher interest rates for a longer period and a higher cash balance due to advance payments on some of the grants that we've received for a couple of our larger projects. The airport was another issue of concern last year. Currently, it is close to being on a balanced budget at the end of the first quarter, which is good news. The income is actually on target at the end of the first quarter, and passenger numbers are marginally up on the budget figure. Although I will put the risk down that we all know that July has been a pretty poor period for flights, so we will have to look at that closely. But the first quarter, which is a quarter that we took a significant hit last year, we are actually on target. There is a small overspend on some of the staffing costs due to extra training, and mainly down to a higher staff turnover in the fire service at the airport than normal, which means we've got to pay for those fire service staff to be trained to the requisite standards, and we've got more than we'd normally train in a single year. So in summary, on the revenue side, a significant overspend, which is of concern, and is obviously something that we have to think about as we go forward in the year in terms of any other spending plans, and how does that then follow through into future years. In terms of the savings, you'll see that we assessed the rating. We started the year, we anticipated all the savings were green. We've now got a couple that have moved to red. Based on the latest assessment, we will be working with service managers to try and mitigate those down such that we do deliver those savings. The capital programme is set out in front of you there, which is a significant sum now. We are adding additional money in this time for the Mosaic implementation as part of the improvement plan for children's services. As a key part of the improvements that are required is to have a proper case management system. The programme itself, in terms of spend in the first quarter, we were quite confident that last year that we ended up with a spend very close to our forecast. This year, in the first quarter, we are very slow spend in the first quarter. We've only spent 3% of the budget, but that is due to a couple of our major projects, in the main the ones around the Cultural Centre and Museum, which will have a significant spend in the second half of the financial year. I will skip over the climate adaptation project because as of the end of the first quarter, it is mainly complete, and the first quarter spend is mainly the tying up of invoices that were not paid in the first part of the year, and it's just the tidying up at the end of the scheme. Culture Centre and Museum, there's no real comment as it's yet to really start in earnest. So moving on to council tax collection, only to say that although very marginally behind the target, it is pretty much on very, very close to that on target, which is good news. It's still holding up. I keep saying that every quarter we report, but it is good that council tax is holding up and we're getting that revenue in as forecast. Business rate collection is ahead of schedule. Again, good position to be in, and confidence that we will deliver the level of business rate income we anticipated in our budget. Water rates, we have collected no money during the first quarter, but there are a number of legal cases going on, so we're hopeful that we can still make inroads into that final £28,000 that is outstanding. It's come down, as I've reported previously, significantly over the 3 or 4 years since we gave up being the water authority, and I think we are reaching the final 12 months when we will try and secure the final income in against that debt. Housing rent, unfortunately, we have increased the amount of arrears on housing rent. When we're looking at work with the housing service managers to see what's causing that. Some of it is that there may be an additional week in the first quarter in terms of the rental that was invoiced, but we collect the income on a standing order basis, so there can be a mismatch every now and again. But there is still, even accounting for that, arrears are starting to build, and we need to be careful to monitor that going forward. If there's any comments, sundry debt is well in target. Payment of our own invoices to our suppliers, we have had a very poor quarter, and it's an area I need to have a look at going in during quarter 2 to see why we are not hitting the payment targets. We have had a slight blip with the way that there was a change in the system, but that doesn't account for all the red indicators there. I will leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Russell. Councillor Grottek, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Chief Executive and 151 Officer for taking us through this financial performance report. As he outlines, most local authorities at the moment are under pressure, and the staffing pressures may well increase. What is possibly a little bit optimistic is that the government are actually acknowledging some of the general pressures that local authorities find themselves with, and it will be interesting to see whether they follow up this general acknowledgement of the pressure with any increases in the grant funding. Then, of course, we have our key challenges, which remain the pressure on agency staff, with some improvement, which is noted in adult social services, and the pressure of the airport has decreased somewhat, which is good. I was going to finish by asking 2 specific questions, but the Chief Executive has answered them. I was interested to know if we were still pursuing the outstanding water bills, since those who can pay should pay. That is fair. And also I was going to note with some concerns the fact that we are not paying invoices particularly well on time, and that in these difficult times cash flow for small businesses is so very important. So I do hope we can carry on and try and do a little bit better in that respect next time. Thank you. I would be happy to recommend the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford, please.
Thank you. It's a query, really. You know, maths is my really strong point, don't you, Russell? It's about adult social care. It's about income, and the main part of that income is that self-funded. So that's not fixed, is it? It could change in a matter of weeks. That's a bit worrying in a way. Let's hope the self-funded live a bit longer, but I know, really, everybody a long and happy life. It's the fact that even though it has come down to 250k, it's still a substantial part of the overall budget for adult social care, isn't it? The overspend. And I'm actually quite concerned about that, really. I've become quiet.
So am I concerned about it,
Yeah.
and obviously it is part of the regular meetings I have with the director in that area, the acting director in that area. We are looking to reduce the need of agency staff, particularly in and around Park House. The number of long-term sick has slightly reduced, but we have still got a significant number of proportionally long-term sick in there. I would say it's been further mitigated, not helped in the last couple of weeks, although this is after these forecasts, is that we've now had an occurrence of the number of staff going down with COVID. And unlike other areas of the council where if people go off sick, say they go off sick in Nicola's area, we just make do with the staff. In Park House, we can't, because obviously we have a statutory duty to look after the residents in Park House, and we can't take action. So that brings in the agency staff. We do need to find a better solution to just calling on agency staff, though. So we need to have a bank, in my view, but how we go around and putting that in place is something I need to discuss with the director.
Going back to, pressures, the last time we had pressures like this with agency staff and staff illness, a lot was talked about of how we integrate the health and social care staff to address these pressures, to try and bring staff in from other. We are talking about an integrated hub, and I just wonder where we are with that to help us with these pressures.
In terms of the integrated hub, you're right, that is in the business case for the integrated hub, that having an integrated workforce will help mitigate agency staff. Unfortunately, it won't help for this financial year because that will not be in place until probably next summer at the earliest after the build. But it is one of the parts of the business case that went forward to help substantiate the grant money that we got, was that we would help mitigate agency staff going forward if we could better use the workforce between ourselves and the NHS.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you. So we had a large overspend last financial year. We're headed for, on the trajectory, a significant one this year. It just feels our budget setting challenges are just getting more and more tight. The sort of breathing space for headroom just seems to be getting more and more narrow, which isn't great. Okay. But my specific questions were about the home upgrade grant. It's not an insignificant amount. I was just keen to hear what that is, who it's for, how we deliver that. And then also in the capital programme, we've had cemetery groundworks and things for a long time in there without much progress. But I think Rob, the chairman, and I have had various conversations with the Duchy. Am I right in thinking now we might be headed in the right direction for getting that sorted?
I'll answer the question on the cemetery first. In terms of that, yes, we now have the land agreements in place, and you will now start to see some of the spend happening in the second half of the financial year. I believe that we will gain physical access to the piece of land that we need to have to extend in late September, about the 26th or 28th of September, that we will get access to the land, and then you'll start seeing the works that we need to do to prepare that ground ready to be a usable cemetery start taking place. In terms of first part of your question, which was around the homes grant for the energy in the homes, I don't know whether Nicola knows more about it, but it was money that was bid for initially successfully by our colleagues in our public health service. And as you know, our public health service is run by Cornwall Council for us. They bid and successfully got that grant money to address some of our worst impacted houses. Originally, we thought they'd, very good to do that. It's part of our much bigger programme. We anticipated that they would directly deliver that from Cornwall. We've now had to put it through our books due to the thorny subject of VAT, that as it's our houses, we need to incur the expenditure to have the VAT recoverable. Otherwise, if Cornwall do it, they can't recover the VAT. That is the reason we've added it into our capital programme. In terms of the specific activity, I would hand over and see whether Nicola has the actual answer to that.
Yeah, I can double check the figures, but I think there's 16 homes that have been approved. There was going to be a second phase, but we failed to get funding for the second phase. But that's the first phase of it. So my understanding is 16 homes, but I'll confirm that in 2 years.
Thank you. Councillor Peacock, please.
Notice from the report that 1 in 10 of our tenants aren't paying their rent on time. Do we have robust procedures in place to recover that rent? And I'd be assured that this isn't going to roll. I know it's not a significant amount of money, but it's quite an alarming percentage to me. And we just need to make sure that as a council, if it even gets to the point of bailiffs being called in to recover the rent, that we are happy to undertake that.
Okay, sorry. It's possible. I don't go into too much detail, but it's possibly pure individuals, repeat offenders, rather than it being a widespread issue. As you know, those people going to rent arrears, we work with them on a payment plan. What we've found is some people are now defaulting on those payment plans. Now that could be down to personal circumstances. So we work with those people with a solution, but we are getting to the point now where we will have to look at legal action as opposed to informal action. So there is a point where you have to cross the line, isn't there? Where we've done all we can to help, but there is a point where if you're not paying your rent, then there has to be consequences. And unfortunately, we are getting to that point with a few individuals. So you will possibly be seeing more enforcement action in respect of rent collection.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, just a couple of individual points about the report. Just noticed with the airport figures that Skybus in every month was down, basically, which is a concern. And if that continues through the year, then that won't be great. In terms of the capital programme, it's got the purchase of Bosun's Locker and the purchase of Kirklees and other houses. I thought those had completed already and people were in those houses. So, no?
Bosun's Locker, we have a tenant in there. We have to put a fund application in to regularise a few things and do some improvement works to that property. So that fund there is to do those improvement works and put that right. Purchase of Kirklees and other houses. Kirklees is, we have a retention been held for some works that are still required on that property. And we're still awaiting Octopus to put the electricity supplies into those properties and have been waiting on a number of months. And then with the chairman's permission, we've written to the chief executive of Octopus to ask for their help in resolving the issue to ensure that we've got electricity supplies into those properties.
Okay. And in terms of the savings, the DMR, the removal of cardboard from DMR waste, is that going to be actually be able to achieve this year?
It's the cardboard, the cardboard. I think that's been deferred for 1 year while we put the new waste collection in place. Is that one?
I mean, the reason it's gone red is because we don't think it's deliverable at the moment, and the reason we've moved it to a red rating is because we don't think it's going to be delivered, and we've asked the service manager for mitigations. I don't know whether Rebecca wants to respond to that.
So we are still obviously segregating and will be segregating further the cardboard out of the mixed recycling as it currently is, especially for businesses. So at the moment we've got a bit of a mismatch in services provided for householders and businesses. That works continuing, obviously, and as of next year, we hope to be able to segregate cardboard and paper further for everyone by having a service that is for everyone. So at the moment, there's a mismatch. So that will
It's just been pushed back 12 months, hence the red rating.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, and just noting the pay award as well. It's personally, it's about time that people got pay rises above inflation and reflected in the hard work they do. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I've had a proposer for the recommendations, Councillor Grottick. Did we have a seconder, please? Councillor Marcus. All those in favour of the two recommendations? That's unanimous. Thank you. And thank you, Russell, very much for your clear report, as usual. Item 13 on our agenda is the Council Performance Summary in the hands of Tom, our Policy and Scrutiny Officer.
Thank you, Chairman. So the main difference for this quarter is that the performance summary is also accompanied by the corporate risk register. So each time you receive this report in the future, it will also include the risk register. Obviously, the risk register is less likely to change quarter to quarter, but it will be there, and you can obviously raise any issues you have at the meeting. So there's two recommendations to consider. That members note the performance summary for quarter one of financial year 24-25. That members note the corporate risk register for quarter one of the financial year 24-25. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford.
I think I'm on the right page. Thank you, Tom. It's the sickness absent rate, percentage working time loss. The national average at the moment is 2.6%. Ours is 6.15%. That's quite significant, isn't it? I wonder how we're managing that.
Yeah, I can answer that one. Yeah, I think I did articulate that in the previous report. We are above average on terms of the sickness absent rate, and in particular the area that is of concern is the sickness absence in and around Park House. We've got a number of long-term sick, and I'm not going to quote the number because it starts getting into the realms of who those people may be, but there are a number of people in there that are on long-term sick. They are being managed, and we are trying to get occupational health involved, but due to the size of our workforce, when you get 2 or 3 on long-term sick, all some of the numbers zoom up because of the relatively small.
That's one area more than across the organisation.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the other thing was active silly. The percent are down, 32%, and that's clear because the honeymoon period is over and unmanned gym sessions. Is there plans to try and boost that? I joined the gym.
Yeah, the service plan and the activities that you'll be seeing on Facebook at the moment, there's a drive for additional activities and extending the offer to different age range as well. So at different times of day and different offers. So they are working on improving numbers.
There's some positive feedback about the swimming doing for the people that are just recovering from operations or have special health, and it's really positive. I've had some positive feedback, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, please.
I'm not sure how the percentage of vacant posts compares to this time last year or the year before, but I guess we're in a sort of complex position with that. Obviously, vacant posts mean additional stress and strain and workload for others, but it helps with our underspends potentially. But I'm also mindful of the risk register that talks about recruitment and retention of staff, which I'm sure all lead members, every time we have a conversation with our respective officers, that's a challenge. So I'm just going to bang and beat the drum again for apprenticeships. I think there's more that we as an authority could be doing to do about recruitment, retention, and that sort of wider staff issue by being more open-minded and promoting apprenticeships as and when appropriate. The risk register is just generally, I don't know whether it's depressing or scary, probably both. So it's not really a question, but just an observation about apprenticeships potentially being a minor factor in improving some of the situations we face.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford.
We've been talking for years about growing your own staff. We're not, putting them into growth acts or anything like that. But, I just think, as Joel said, I think we really do need some sort of strategy, some sort of group, or just something that can really take this on, because it's all sort of, each organisation seems to be doing their own thing. We sort of trained up some nurses and NVQs, and we worked with Burn Silly to get the GCSEs they wanted. And I just wondered if there's a way of being more strategic, having a group that can pull the threads together, like Joel's talking about, apprenticeships, distance learning, online learning, and all the grow your own.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Yeah, the answer is yes, we are looking at a strategic approach. One of the things that I've recognised in the first sort of 6 months of my tenure is that we really do need to push on this area, and I've had discussions with the head of HR, and it is part of a strategy we're putting together over the summer. We've had some initial conversations with the school and with some of the major employers on the island as well. But as you quite rightly say, we also need to lead by example ourselves. So it is something I've very much got at the top of my agenda moving into the second half of this year.
Do we have a strategy?
No, we will have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, it's good to see the risk register back here again. It's risk number 12, hasn't got a score on that one. Just make sure we've got a score in that one for next time, please. And in terms of, it's interesting to see the risks about on-island staff and how that interacts with civil protection and emergency planning. The fact that, we haven't got, our senior leaders aren't here. There will be occasions where there's no one here on island. And if something happens and communications are out, then how is that going to work? It's not, I don't need an answer now, but I need to know that it's been thought about. And
I was just going to come back and the risk register part of your question. I have now introduced a process where the risk register is monitored every month by the management team, and will then follow every quarter to full council. And we'll to pick up the issue I just picked it up, that obviously there's no score for that one, and promise that we will get that in for Q2.
Cool.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just with regard to Appendix B and the performance measures, I'd just like to say that I think I would have liked to see a little bit more acknowledgement of the challenges around the integrated workforce with regard to the new building up at the hospital, where I think, it's going to be quite a challenging piece of work, I think. I think the workforce are very open to integrating, but I think there's still an awful lot of work to be done before we have an integrated workforce up there. And in many ways, I would say that the building part of the integrated hub is actually more easy, perhaps, than actually working out the different ways of working together so that we get the outcomes that we really want. And I would have liked to have seen a bit more of that acknowledged, rather than it look as though, because, we know we're going to do it, it's actually been achieved, which I would argue we're only at the starting blocks at the moment, although I do know work is going on in that area at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Peacock, please.
As a council, should we be alarmed that in the risk register, every single risk is higher than the target risk? Am I just being naive?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, this is the strategic risk register to start with, so there's a significant more risks we are managing. Our risk register is that we have a series of risks. This is the risk that we score them at as of today. Our target is always to try and mitigate that risk and further reduce those risks downwards. Maybe as we move forward with our risk reporting, we may be able to give you a better longer term picture of how those risks reduce over a period of time. So what we're measuring is the risk as of today, and then our plans to try and further reduce that risk. Some of those risks may already have been reduced. So it's all part of the infancy of trying to reintroduce our risk register reporting. There's more work needed, but at least we've now got it in front of you and you're aware of the risks, which was an issue that was picked up by our external auditors that it had dropped off the radar.
I just wonder whether the target risks were set too low. Was my second part of the question.
Could potentially be that. It is going to be looked at on a monthly basis. It will get refined. That's all I comment at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus. Please.
Sorry, yeah, and just waste and recycling in the performance summary. Can we please have asked for, but can we have, it says 15% reduction by 2025, 15% reduction of what? So in the narrative, it does talk about targets, but it should be in the table, please, so we know what we're trying to achieve.
Will do.
Okay, thank you. So do I have a proposer, please, for the recommendation, the two recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Peacock. Seconder, please. Councillor Marcus. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the report. Our next item is item 15. Is item 14, the corporate plan midpoint review, also in the hands of Tom. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Chairman. The Council's corporate plan covers the periods 1st of April 2022 to the 31st of March 2026. When it was approved at Council back in February 2022, Council was resolved to undertake a midpoint review of the progress on the plan this year, i.e. 2024. That midpoint review is now complete and is presented today in the form of 3 documents, Appendices A, B and C to this report. Appendix A provides a summary of the achievability of the corporate plan as assessed by those members and officers identified as being responsible for delivering those objectives. Whilst Appendix A is a summary of progress on the objectives, Appendix B provides more detailed explanation of progress against each of the objectives for anyone wanting to gain a better understanding of the work that has been done. Appendix C focuses on the promises component of the corporate plan as opposed to the objectives. Lead members have indicated the extent to which they believe the Council has moved towards or further away from each of those promises. Narratives included from each of those lead members to explain this in more detail. In addition to the review of progress, members have also indicated that they would like to add an additional objective to go alongside the current 23 objectives in the corporate plan. Members considered that the exceptional circumstances relating to the recent Ofsted inspection of children's social care merited the addition of an objective focused on improving the lives of children. Specifically, Objective 24, develop and implement an outcome-focused children's plan in response to the needs of local children and families. And just to make members aware that there is a typo in that, we're missing the word to the needs. So please take that into account when even when you approve. This report has 2 recommendations. Firstly, that members approve the document attached at Appendix B and the document attached to Appendix C as the Council's assessment of its progress against the corporate plan objectives and promises. And secondly, that members approve the addition of a 24th objective to the corporate plan in light of the exceptional circumstances described in this report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to firstly thank all the members and the officers as well who have enabled us to review the corporate plan and to get where we are. It was good. It was a really interesting meeting, going through the promises and really having a good discussion about each of the promises that we made in the local plan. And I think we've all learned quite a lot of lessons about how wide and maybe too wide we'd spread our aspirations for the council. So I would be pointing, making sure the LGA are aware of the work that we've done and how cognizant and self-aware that we are of the issues and the the problems involved, and we should all be proud of the fact of the process that we've achieved and what was resulted in it. Don't necessarily have to agree with it, and there are going to be issues with it, but I think we should say well done to ourselves for producing the work.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, please.
I think Councillor Peacock was before me.
Sorry, I didn't see your signal. Thank you. Councillor Peacock, please.
Just on the objectives, I remember the workshop we had a while ago. Lots have happened since then. Objective 11, tackle traffic management. I just wonder why we don't think that's achievable by 2026.
I think it says in the report, I was reading that 12, objective 11, whereas ascertain the enforcement powers sit with the police, not the local authority, and powers, we need proactive master planning and local plan review where I should seek to improve traffic flows and reduce congestion by seeking space for existing business expansion in proportionate manner. So I think there's work to be done, but I don't think I think the officers and the members involved in that just thought that it wasn't going to be achievable within the time period of the corporate plan. So this is only, remember, the corporate plan is a bound time period. So it's not going to be solved this week, next year, but maybe soon after that. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Williams now, please.
I certainly particularly welcome the report, welcome the new objective, which is children focused, and hope members play a very active part in developing some of the priorities that fit into that. But I just feel that going forward, I think it would be useful if we're doing this on an annual basis. I know this was a mid-year review, but my suggestion, my preference would be we look at this more regularly as members to keep our oversight of it.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford, please.
Thank you. It was an interesting exercise. Thank you. It's just a query about the corporate health, number 7. It talks about inclusive balance of island-based members of a senior leadership team and those based on the mainland. Is that the one?
That's the risk register.
Different one. Sorry, forget it. I'll go back to sleep.
Okay. Thank you. I'd just like to say from the chair that it's an excellent report, and thank you to everybody that has been working on it. I have to say personally, I'm not terribly comfortable with objective 9, 11 and 12 not being achievable by 2026. Having been extremely close to objective 9, whilst our efforts have been extremely disappointing, to say the very least, your Transport Project Board is still working flat out in every area to try and get our connectivity improved, both for passengers and freight, and our costs down. We're working on it every day, and whilst we haven't found the silver bullet yet, and we may not find the silver bullet, I would just like to say that there will be achievement by 2026. What that will look like, I can't tell you, but I'm just not happy to say we're not going to achieve anything by 2026, because we are. So that's a personal view. And I would also like to say that I know our chief executive and officers are working extremely hard as well on 11 and 12. And we've got a consultant involved with that. And I'm also absolutely focused that we will make a big difference to our traffic management and our vehicles on Scilly in the very near future. It's not going to come in 5 minutes, but there is a big push on this. The situation on St Mary's now is diabolical, to say the least. You know, ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous number of vehicles. And we're all guilty, me included. And we've got to we've got to sort it out, because people come to Scilly because of the special place that it is, and we're just allowing too much. I know it's difficult for us to control, but as I said just now, we've got a consultant on it, and we're going to work very hard to try and make it happen, get our green agenda sorted out so that we've got a lot more electric vehicles and so on than what we've got at the moment. So there is going to be a big push on dealing with objectives 9, 11 and 12. Thank you. And could I please have a proposer for corporate plan recommendations? Councillor Marcus, seconder, Councillor Mumford. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is item 15.
Sorry, Chairman, it is quite hot in here. Quite a few of us find it quite hot. Is there any way we can get some air in here, please?
Yeah, certainly. Could Andrew, you open the doors there, please? Thank you. We'll have to close them again when we get to part 3, but we can leave them open for the moment. Thank you. Item 15 on our agenda is Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Economic Forum, in the hands of our director, Nicola. Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope quite a short item, quite straightforward, I think. The original terms of reference for the Economic Prosperity Board anticipated that the local enterprise partnership would fall within the remit of that board, and the original terms of reference reflected that. However, subsequent discussions, both this council and Cornwall Council, is the proposal that there will be a separate economic forum to give a louder voice and an opportunity for businesses to be heard more easily, and the Islands Forum will represent the islands in feeding information into that economic forum. So the terms of reference that the council originally agreed now need to be updated to reflect those changes in governance. We also need, of course, to have reps on the economic forum and the workforce and skills board. So we're seeking one nomination for the economic forum and one nomination for the workforce and skills board from this council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sims, please.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Peacock for the skills role.
Sorry, say again.
For nominations, I'd like to nominate Councillor Peacock for the skills role.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Grottick. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Peacock. Bear with me. Right, we also need to nominate a member to represent the council on the forum. Could I have a nomination, please? Councillor Peacock?
Nominate Councillor Grottick.
Councillor Grottick, do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Roger?
No.
Thank you. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you very much indeed. Are you happy with that, Councillor Grottick?
Thank you. It's quite a challenge, and I shall be asking for members' support quite a lot, I feel.
Thank you.
Chairman, sorry, can I just, I'll propose the first recommendation.
Yes.
Is that we propose amendments, but if we get told that we're going to get a track change document, we have to make sure that the track changes are actually in the document, because there's nothing in there. It looks normal, so I propose a recommendation.
Yes, sorry, Chairman, I should have pointed that out. The track changes have actually been included but not highlighted.
Thank you. And could I have a seconder for the first recommendation, please? Councillor Peacock. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you very much.
Just make a quick point regarding these roles. I mean, there's going to be a lot of mainland commitment for this, and we need to investigate whether we can have somebody to deputise for them, because sometimes it's simply not possible for the primary person to go. So that needs to be looked at, and I'm sure that the powers that be on the other side will be amenable to that.
Yeah, it's a good point, Councillor Sims. I know Councillor Grottick is concerned about that as well, so we will try and work out a deputy to sit in for either councillors if they cannot attend themselves. Thank you very much.
Just to add, Chairman, just for members' information, the sector boards, there's a position on that for the Islands Partnership and through the LVAC, so we will also have representation there.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Peacock.
Just a question. The Innovation Board, do we have a representative from the Islands on the Innovation Board?
We have not got a representative on the Innovation Board, nor have we been asked to provide one. So it might be something that might be you wish to raise at the next either Leadership Board or Growth Board, just to have an understanding as to why we're not represented there.
I suggest that we take your advice and the Chief Exec's advice as to how to achieve the best representation for the islands. Sometimes you can achieve more at the coffee break than you can at the meeting, so it's something we've got to work out a strategy for making our voice heard as part of the wider strategy at the moment that is really important.
Thank you. Councillor Sims.
I would suggest that linking, if there is a member to go on that board, link it to the skills portfolio, because it's innovation. There's got to be some sort of connection there. And I will also say Cornwall Council have an awful lot of boards. They've got an awful lot of councillors and they've got to give them something to do. And we can't necessarily tag along with everything.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roger, you've still got your light on, did you?
Right.
Thank you. Right, we'll move on now to item 16 on our agenda, which is the Arts Council England Major Projects Funding Bid, again in the hands of Nicola. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Another short report, I hope. We've been very privileged, I think, and supported by the Arts Council on these islands. And since 2017, we've been able to achieve major projects funding the islands, firstly through the Islands Partnership and more recently through the Council. As we go into the transition through to the new town hall, the new entity that's been set up to run that facility, the suggestion has been, as we go into this next phase of funding ask, is that they become the applicant for the next Arts Council funding grant. So this is at the suggestion of the Arts Council that we need to build up a reputation for them as an organisation as successfully delivering grant bids, grant applications and delivering the implementation of that. So we are supporting the new entity in putting a new application into the Arts Council for the period between January next year and May 2026. So the first recommendation is really just to say that we're endorsing that application and supporting them in that process. The second point really is that there is a risk that an organisation won't receive its charitable status in time for the bid to be submitted. The bids can take between 12 and 16 weeks in determination. So really ought to be getting the application in August. So I've put a second recommendation in there saying if they don't get incorporated at the right time, so they haven't got their charitable status in time, that the council step in and become the applicant for this next application, just to make sure an application goes in, because it's really important that we have this funding moving forward. The third recommendation really relates to what we've always done, or we've always supported these bids, and the council continues to support match funding of £10,000 towards the next grant. That £10,000 gets us £135,000 worth of activity and support for these islands. So it's a good investment. It's difficult times to be asking the council for money, but I think it's really important as a partner and a priority place that work with the Arts Council to deliver cultural activities on the island, that we're seen to continue to provide that support, whether we're the applicant or not. We are a key stakeholder, we are a key partner, and it's important that we put our money where our mouth is. So those are the three recommendations before you today, Chairman. So seeking to endorse the submission of the application by the new entity, the CIO, that we also step in if they are incorporated in the right time, and thirdly that we provide £10,000 worth of grant support as match funding to support the application and make sure it's a strong application to release £135,000 or more of Arts Council and other funding to the islands.
Thank you. Councillor Dean, please.
Yes, absolutely. Totally agree with everything Nick has said. It's very good value for money, putting 10 grand in and getting all that out. And obviously it's sensible to put this in there that if the charitable organisation isn't registered in time, that we do it on their behalf. So I wholeheartedly support the recommendations and our proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, I support the idea behind it, and definitely realise that it's good value for money. If they're not incorporated in time, and you say we step in, what does that look like? Is there a risk of us being the applicants? What financial risk is that? Is there a cost of doing that? Are we doing that application? If we're doing that application, what are we not doing to do that application?
So we're supporting the application anyway. If we were the applicant, the change would be that we would get the administrative costs to support our time in dealing with the proposals. So within the scheme that's set out in, I think it's paragraphs 22 onwards, sets out what we're going to be doing. It'll be the same programme in effect as before, where we recruit other people to do the programme for us. So basically, half an hour of my week is set managing those people that are doing this activity. That would be the same moving forward if we were the applicant, because we'd then take the administrative costs that are in the bid and that come to the council rather than to the new entity. If we transfer in the middle of that period, then we'll be having a conversation about who's going to be managing what within this transition period. And that's one of the conversations we're having tomorrow with the charitable organisation, just to say, let's be really clear about the roles and responsibilities moving forward. We're in a transition zone, there's going to be lots of grey areas. And if if they become a new entity in the middle of this, we'll still be the accountable body for the funding. But they might take on more of the activity work. They might have an activities manager. They might have a centre manager within this next period who'll be wanting to direct and support these activities in a more hands-on way than we would want to have at that stage. So we're going into a transition period now.
Sorry, yeah, no, I totally support getting them up and running and giving them funding to be able to employ people and get people working and produce their own stuff. And just in terms of match funding, I know money is tight for every organisation on the island. What happens if the match funding isn't forthcoming from other organisations?
So what we've had to do in the past is if the match funding hasn't come in, we then scale back. So we tailor it back down. So we cut the cloth according to our means and we look for the funding. So we've still done great programmes over the last few years, but some of it's been SPF funded or it's been funded from other Arts Council programmes. So we'll continue to maintain the programme and work with the Islands Partnership as well to make sure what's up on offer to the visitors in our community is as strong as ever. Regardless of what grant we get, we'll still try and do the best we can with the money we've got.
Thank you.
Councillor Bedford, please.
Good sales pitch, Nicola. Thank you very much. And I'm going to make myself quite unpopular. We've just spent quite a bit of time this evening talking about the financial pressures this council is under, to the tune of £650,000 with their statutory services. I take on board what you're saying. If we're successful, or if they're successful, it's money coming back. But we don't know we're going to be successful. People are listening to this meeting thinking, well, they're in debt. They're not in debt, but they've got some real financial pressures. Why are they giving money to non-statutory services? And I think some people might feel uncomfortable about that.
I think one of the things we've talked about a lot tonight is young people. The key focus of this funding is working with young people, young curators, young promoters, and internships will be created as part of this new town hall facility. You can't have a new building without activities that go on within it. And this is part and parcel of the development of that new facility as you run your activity programme alongside it. It creates a great opportunity for the young people of these islands. It creates opportunities for apprenticeships. There's all sorts of things that come off of the back of this. It's part of that bigger jigsaw puzzle we all talk about. But it's an intrinsic part because without the activities, there's no point having a building that sits there not being used. So this builds into the future.
Isn't that what grant was for? Didn't we get all that money to get this up and running and to be the spectacular facility for the community? And I'm playing devil's advocate here because someone has to, and I suddenly we're being asked for another 10 grand because we've always given it. You said we've always supported it, we've always given it, but we've not always been in this financial situation where we're looking at really considerable costs on children's services and adult services. And yes, children are going to be our focus. That is why we're investing a phenomenal amount of money. But what happens if we turn around and say, well, actually, we can't afford 10 grand this year? Where will that 10 grand come from if we say no?
I think it would send out completely the wrong signals to the Arts Council, to National Lottery and all the other funders of that new facility that we're not willing to put in £10,000 to support the activity programme that runs at the heart of the new facility.
We have put money in. I've been councillor for over 3 years and we've put money in. We have match fund year on year. And now I'm saying because we're in this financial situation where, and Russell's asking all services to look about how they can cut back, how they can, cut back their costs. And I'm really trying, to look at the other side, to tip it over to see, well, can we actually afford it as a council? I know all the arguments for it, about how we're going to develop it. But actually, it is money, and it is money that community taxpayers pay. And they're going to be worried about their community tax next year and can they afford to keep on running adult social care and the real need to change children's services.
So all I would say is you need to invest wisely. So what you need to know is that you get good value for money. And if I had £10,000 and invested it and I got £135,000 back, I would say that represents good value for money.
A guarantee. If you tell me that you can spend 10,000 and it's an absolute guarantee that you'll get that 130 back, that's brilliant. I'll withdraw everything I say. But is there a guarantee?
That's the bid, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
I was just alluding to the same point. Basically, these things work on the basis of multipliers. We put 10 grand in, we get considerably more back. And also that 10 grand over the course of a period of time, it's a capital investment. One hopes will return more than £10,000, and that's ignoring the huge amount of money that's put in on top. So I would quite happily oppose this.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, please.
I think it's a really healthy debate to be having. Personally, I support the value for money in the arguments that Nicola has given, but there have been other reports in the not too distant past where I thought value for money has been lacking. And I'm going forward, I just wonder how we get sort of consistency so that we get some sort of framework in place so we can judge what we're putting in with what we're getting out. For me, this looks like we potentially are going to get a lot more out than we put in, both financially and socially. But there's certainly been other reports which we've approved in the last year, which have been brought before council, where I thought it wasn't the greatest use of money. So, yeah, I'm just wondering how we can get a framework to make sure that we have some sort of assurance over these conversations and debates going forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. I will discuss that with the Chief Executive and see if we can do that in future. For now, I've got a proposer and a seconder for the 3 recommendations. All those in favour, please. That's carried. Thank you very much. I nearly 2 hours. Yeah. I think we'll crack on for a minute. The next item on our agenda is item 17, which is the disposal of artefacts to the Museum Association, again in the hands of Nicola. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this report relates to the disposal of the artefacts currently held by the Ailsa Museum Association. Now, the way in which artefacts have been held in the past is no longer recognised by museum authorities as a valued form of donation. So in order to regularise it, we're required to use a transfer title of all the assets that they hold, so they can hold them legally within their organisation. So it's a regularisation of the existing situation. You'll see from the list of assets there are many and varied. Some date right back to 1967 when the original museum was set up. Some are more recent. The recommendation one relates to those that they've already held right to the current point in time. So it's a regularisation of the existing situation. The second recommendation relates to the two globes that were previously located in here, I think. And the proposal is that they also get transferred to the Museum Association and onto the new entity. This is because the existing globes require specialist conservation and care, and that will cost money. We're not able to access grants to do that, but the Isles of Scilly Museum Association will be able to access grant funding to do that. If they're no longer ours, then also we won't have the insurance cost of them. They will be prominently displayed as part of the heritage of the islands within that new facility. And it will secure their attention, conservation and display into the future for both visitors and the community. So the list of artefacts is extensive. I won't go into them, but it's two points really. One, transfer the ones that we've already got legally so that they can be held correctly by the Museum Association and then into the new entity. And secondly, the disposal of the globes to them to enable them to be looked after properly and secured into the future for public display. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Nicola. Councillor Grottig, please.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies to colleagues. I did a helicopter of this report and then meant to go back and actually look to see whether you'd mentioned the guns and the bayonets that are behind me anywhere, and whether or not the museum was going to be given those, given that. Apologies, I didn't have my light on.
You go again, briefly.
Yes. I was just asking, I meant to have a look and see whether the guns and the bayonets were mentioned, and whether or not the Museum Association will be interested in having those added to the list, since at the moment I thought we were managing to agree to differ without recourse to either the guns or the bayonets. Thank you.
Chairman, those are not included in the asset transfer at this stage.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
Now, I've looked through. Do the museum want all this stuff? Because some of it is quite nice. Like, my light's not on. That's what I was saying. Yeah, I was going to say, do the museum want all this stuff? Because, well, some of this stuff is good. The Boys Brigade bugle and things like that, they're nice, but a lot of it is junk. I mean, do they actually want it all? And also, if the globes are insured for 103k, could we not possibly sell them? Because I noticed that they're going to be stuck in the corner of the auditorium. They're big, and if the auditorium is going to be used, then they're going to wheel them out. So I think they could quite quickly turn into a liability as opposed to an asset. And they're not, I would say they're not massively interesting. You could get in and turn them around, perhaps. But I mean, do the museum want them? And if they don't, perhaps we could find somebody who would like to have them in the lounge.
I think, Chairman, if I may, I think they would like them, yes. I think there is a story to tell, which I've partly told in here, but I'm sure they'll tell it much better. I think it's for them to decide on the rest of the assets, which ones they want to display or not. I think the point is at the moment they hold all those assets that were in our name previously. They are sifting through them, and this list has come from a catalogue. So previously there wasn't a full list of all the items that were held by the Museum Association. So this is part of that cataloguing process. And in the cataloguing process, they're then having to look at the authenticity of and the provenance of those artefacts. And that's where this paper's come from, really, is to try and regularise the situation. And I'm sure they will be sifting through what will be on display and what will not be on display, and sorting out what they can dispose of or put in long-term storage.
So also, I suppose the liability of all these objects passes to somebody else, which is obviously a plus from our perspective. Thank you.
I'd just like to comment from the chair before I take one or two of the others. But I did notice that the globes were donated by a Mumford. I imagine your family, Avril, and if they were donated to the council, even though, you know, we need some cash, as we've been talking about all evening, I'm not sure whether the person who donated them would actually like the idea that we've sold them, rather than giving them to the museum. So I'd just like to make that comment. But would you like to come in, Councillor Mumford? You've got your light on anyway.
Well, if my late husband would hear, he'd be horrified if they didn't go to the museum. Councillor Stims, I don't know where your history is. All these things are history. And Clive is a historian. He would be in good favour of all those things going to the museum. And I might tell you, actually, the museum had been up into the top of my shop and taken a lot of stuff for history. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, just reading the legal implications. So, to put it down as a minute, that the museum, if the museum association were to cease for any reasons, the council takes ownership of all of the list here for no cost at all.
Could I just, for the record, really, the artefacts would revert back to the council, but it's not just the museum association, because they could pass them on to the new charitable organisation as well. So I think when we do the deed of transfer, we'll make sure legally we get that checked to make sure if it's gone from the museum to the new entity, it comes back to the council, whether it's the museum or new entity. So I think some legal wording on that title, the deed of transfer, that we need to just double check with our legal team before we do the final signing of the papers.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Legg, please.
I just noticed that the old brazier from St Agnes Lighthouse is in there that was rescued from the dump, and I just thought that it's a good reminder that one man's trash is another man's treasure, and that we need to be mindful about what we throw away.
Okay, thank you very much. So with Councillor Peacock, sorry.
While we're talking about these items, I noticed there's a grandfather clock. And there are a number of items here on this list that may have a residual value. And I am nervous, as a councillor sitting here, about to, we're just talking about a massive deficit of 457, whatever that deficit figure was. I'm very nervous that we are donating these items, yes, for a very good cause, but they're coming off our asset register, as it were. And I want to ensure that we're not giving anything away with a high value that we could sell, with the exception of talking about discussion around the globes in a minute, that we could sell that would generate some income for the council. Especially, if everything was hunky-dory, we hadn't been discussing in the previous part of the meeting what our financial position was, which is not great in certain circumstances. I just feel nervous in my own self that there may well be items on this list. I mean, most of it is trivial. But there are one or two items in the list. The one that Harry's picked up might have a value, and the one, again, a grandfather clock might have a value, but we don't know. So my request would be, prior to this assets being given away, can we at least, someone have a look over and work out if there's anything of value that we shouldn't be giving away? I'm sure Nicola's already done this, I just want clarification.
The items of greatest value are the globes that you're aware of, because we insure them. The other items, we're not aware of anything of any significant value. Now, that's not to say there isn't a hidden gem there, but we haven't held these items since 1967 at times. So it would be a bit ridiculous for us now to start paying them back. And also, you've got to be mindful of how these were gifted as well to if they were the councils in the first place. They were often for the community. It was for the council, for the community to receive and view these as part of our social history. So we're on very dodgy territory if we start with thinking about asset stripping on this one.
Okay, well, bearing that in mind, I'm more than happy to take that back.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dean, please.
I haven't really got anything to add. Nicola's just stolen my thunder, really. I think, the point's just been made. These things were gifted to the council for the community. We can't just flog them off and pay our debts off. I mean, that's outrageous, John. I'm sorry. But, they were gifted to us for the benefit of the community and to be shared with the community. So it seems the only logical solution is certainly all the stuff that they've already got, we certainly don't want it back. So, you know, I don't want a bag of seashells, and was one of the things on the list. But the globes, yes, they have a value, but they've also got a very interesting history. I urge you to read the narrative behind them. They were used for training school children in navigation and stuff. So it's important historical stuff. So we can't possibly think about selling them, is my view.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
Just a question about, I couldn't see it in the list. Is the box of cogs in there? That was kept over there for ages. I think that was the internal workings of the church clock. Because if the museum don't want them, I'm sure there's a neurologist somewhere who'd love to have them. As long as they don't come back in here.
Councillor Fraser, please.
Can they be used as match funding? Well, the whole shebang, the value there, we would find in £10,000 just now.
No, but the Museum Association are looking for grants to restore many of these things. So it's the opposite. In fact, they're a liability.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mumford.
Well, I definitely think they should stay with the museum. I'm horrified that it's all history of the islands, and it'll go on for years and years and years, and hopefully our children will benefit by all these things to go and see and learn about them. I would like to propose the recommendations, please.
Thank you very much. Councillor Guy.
Seconded.
Thank you. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Nicola, for all your work on that. We move swiftly on to item 18, Isles of Scilly Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty funding, in the hands of Rebecca Williams, our Head of Environment. Thank you.
Hi everyone. So this report provides members with an update on the Isles of Scilly National Landscape Partnership, both in the national context and local context, and the funding arrangement support delivery of the Isles of Scilly National Landscape 24-25 delivery plan and the Farming in Protected Landscapes programme. And recommendation 1 is for members to note the transfer of funding to the Isles of Scilly Wildlife Trust as the Isles of Scilly National Landscape delivery partner. This report also informs members of the statutory responsibilities of Council to ensure that an AONB management plan is produced and reviewed every 5 years. And recommendation 2 of this report is for members to endorse the Isles of Scilly National Landscape Partnership to undertake review of the current management plan on behalf of and in partnership with the Council. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Legg, please.
I think the report's pretty straightforward. Look forward to members' comments on it. And I would encourage all members to get involved with the management plan review process where they have the chance to.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus?
Yeah, just one question. In paragraph 19, it talks about contributions, and it says in kind next to the council. Can you define what that means, please?
The in kind, you said that's officer time. So it's my time and staff's time spent on supporting and advising the National Landscape Partnership.
So instead of giving them money, we're giving them your time instead.
Yeah, we do give them a cash contribution also, which is the figure below.
But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Legg, were you proposing?
Yes, yeah, happy to propose.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, Councillor Marcus? All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. If you remain seated, Rebecca, thank you. Because you've got 1 or 2 ahead of you yet. Item 19 is the Elms Landscape Recovery Steering Group in your hands. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this report seeks members' approval for the lead member of Environment, Environmental Services and Climate Change to act as a steering group member for the Elms Landscape Recovery Small is Beautiful scheme. The Elms scheme is strategically important for the islands and will deliver key ambitions set in the corporate plan, the Climate Change Action Plan, the Resilient Island Strategy and the Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty Management Plan. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Councillor Legg, please.
I should mention that Harry Legg, as opposed to Councillor Legg, has also been appointed to this steering group as the representative for St Agnes. And so I've spoken with the project leadership team on this, and they would be happy for me to nominate a deputy to take the seat whilst I am lead member for environment, so that the council has a representative as well as St Agnes having a representative on the steering group. I should also mention that the report mentions that there may be financial implications to attend off-island meetings, workshops and farm walks. I spoke to the project leadership again, and they said that they would be covering any costs incurred, and that wouldn't fall to the council. With that in mind, I don't know whether the council want to suggest someone to go forward as a deputy, or whether they're happy to leave it up to me to decide on an ad hoc basis.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Legg. Councillor Marcus?
Yeah, I'm happy to leave it to you, Harry, basically, to decide about deputy, and I'm happy to propose a recommendation as well.
Thank you. I would agree with that. And Councillor Guy is seconding. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 20 is the Managing Council Open Spaces and Highways for Nature policy. Rebecca, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So this report presents a policy framework to members for consistent decision making and guidance on maintaining and enhancing biodiversity on council maintained land. This policy will act as an operational document to guide our operational services team in managing our open spaces, highway verges and hedges to help ensure biodiversity is conserved, and where possible restored. This report also highlights to members the strength and biodiversity duty which is placed on Council under the Environment Act 2021. The recommendation 1 of this report is for Council to adopt the Managing Council Open Spaces and Highways for Nature policy as set out in Appendix A to this report, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just thank you for the report, Rebecca, and I'd just like to express what a sterling job the council workforce have done with the roads, the hedges and the trim back, and I think it should be noted that they have done a very good job. On that note, I'll propose a recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I think as someone who spends more time looking at hedges than the average person, I think there's a sort of balance to be found between the road safety, the protecting wildlife and public perception. And I think the public perception is one that, particularly in areas like the churchyard, is quite sensitive. It can be an amazing place for wildlife, but it can look untidy if that's your point of view. So I just wonder whether we could perhaps do a bit more signage to explain why an area is having no mow or whatever. But generally, I work with members of the council workforce on private bits of land which are against the highways, and I think they have a good way of conversing with both the landowner and the contractor. So I think we're not doing a bad job on all this.
Thank you. Councillor Sims.
I would absolutely agree with Andy about this year has been exceptionally good for clearing the hedges. I mean, this is possibly the only year for 40 years when Glenn Lucas hasn't complained about the hedges, and he absolutely won't mind me saying that. I think they do a really, really good job of it, and it's obviously a balance to be between biodiversity and the hedges. But I think when a long time ago, I spoke to somebody at the Wildlife Trust about birds nesting in hedges. And he said, well, they don't really because it's too busy, and it's always the other side of the hedge. And I think we do need to bear in mind that there is the other side of the hedge when it comes to keeping the highways clear. But yeah, I completely endorse this. And again, they've done a great job this year. It's really good. It's compared to every other year, it's been exceptionally good. Oh, just one other thing. They do. I know there was I mentioned a couple of years back. It was just that across the road from Maypole Triangle. Top of the hedge there was all cleared off. There were loads of nice flowers on it, and then it was sort of agreed, I think, to leave it, but they've given it a haircut this year, so it's gone. But just to mention that because it looks really nice, and it's nowhere near the highway. Just a little thought there.
Thank you for that. Councillor Mumford, please.
I think Councillor Marcus was.
You go first.
Right, okay. I would just like to say that I had so many complaints about the churchyard this year. Can we make sure if we're going to have no mow May, that they mow on the 31st or whatever, 30th of April? Because I think it was an unfortunate time this time because there were quite a few people that just buried their relatives. Yeah.
Good point. Thank you very much, Councillor Mumford. Councillor Marcus.
Yes, so this is just a formalising of what happens at the moment. There's nothing new in here in terms of practice, or is there anything changed because of this?
There might be some extra non-cutting potentially happening, but I think the report explains that we want to do that with the communities. They're community-led also, and that we're not just going to create a wildflower meadow over Holgates Green, for example, that we want to work with the community where those opportunities exist to encourage more nature in those open spaces, and the reasons why that's good to do. So on the whole, the team have been managing under what was the biodiversity policy, which never came before full council. So this is sort of seen now as that policy in practice. So there could be some changes and more areas left for nature, but we want to do that in consultation with the community.
Thank you very much. Councillor Grottick, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say well done for finding that there's potential for funding income to the council to manage some open spaces. That's in paragraph 9 on page 297. Keep an eye on it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we've got a proposer in Andy Guy and a seconder in Steve Sims for these recommendations. All those in favour, please. Thank you. That's unanimous. More of the same from you, Rebecca, please. I think we've discussed some of this already, but the roadside hedge and tree management policy.
Yeah, so nice segue into this. So this report presents to members a roadside hedge and tree management policy. So this policy provides information to the public on the council's responsibility to maintain safety on the highway and what responsibilities are for local landowners and occupiers to maintain highway safety. So recommendation 1 is that members adopt the roadside hedge and tree management policy as set out in Appendix A of this report. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Sims.
Yeah, just one particular regarding trees. Outside, it's provided by Old Town Shop where they make the gin. There's an elm tree, and it's hugely hanging over the road. I can't drive on that side of the road. And I did have a word with him about it, and he said, well, the council have put a TPO on it, tree protection order, and he can't cut it. Now, I don't think a TPO would supersede highway. But just mentioning that it perhaps a degree of clarification perhaps to people, because it's definitely, you should be able to drive a vehicle along the road without, tree branches at head height. Well, when I'm sat down driving,
Thank you. Councillor Williams, please.
Yeah, I just wondered if we have a persistent offender who won't cut back, if there's a private section of road, not ours, do we reclaim that? Do we just have to take the hit at our expense anyway? I just wonder whether there's a way of getting some money back from naughty people.
Yeah, there is a process whereby we issue Section 154 letters. I think that's a legal highway authority ability in legislation to be able to do that and reclaim costs back. So if a private occupier or owner of the land doesn't do what we've required of them, we can issue legal orders and notices on them. And if we have to cut because of safety issues, we can reclaim those costs back.
Thank you. Councillor Legg. Thank you.
I would like to propose the recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sims seconding the recommendation. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you for all your work, Rebecca. Item 22 on our agenda is for a future council meeting. Part 2 reports are information only. But I'm going to suggest after 2.25 hours that we have a few minutes recess before we move into part 3. Yeah, okay, well I'll take the recommendation first, then we'll have a short recess for a few minutes before we move into part 3. So item 24 on our agenda is the exclusion of the public, that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of that act as amended. being information about the business affairs of particular persons. Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Grotty. And a seconder, Councillor Peacock. All those in favour? It's passed.